Oh hey, what's going on? I'm Zach here from PremiumBeat, looking like your average YouTuber, but I can assure you this setup is an amazing setup, and that's what we're gonna be talking about today, which is the ultimate shooting sort of system. I've got my Ronin S attached to my Sony a7 III, connected to an auto-focusing Sigma 50mm at a 1.4. You might be saying like, whoa, that's a lot going on. It is an amazing setup. I've been using it for music videos, event shoots, and basically anything that I want to have a little bit of cinemagic flair. Let's get into it. Now, I'm not here to talk to you about why you need a gimbal or why you don't need a gimbal or to advertise a brand. I'm really just going to be talking about the importance of this setup and why it is freaking dynamite. So with that, I'm going to show you a bit of a little example piece of one of my favorite all-time setups, utilizing what we talked about at the beginning of the episode, which is, again, 50mm lens. Now this can be any sort of 50mm prime. I really enjoy the Sigma 1.4, and all of the gear and bits, gadgets, and gizmos will be included in the blog post below. But essentially, what the gear I've been using for this system is a Sigma 50mm at a 1.4. I like going and dancing between 1.4 and a 2.8. And then what we have is the Ronin S. Now this is just a freaking monster gimbal. I've had my hand and played around with a bunch of other gimbal systems out there. You're just in any sort of aggressive scenarios, which like myself, I do a lot of event videos and a lot of sort of recaps. I'll be in the side of like a side-by-side filming my friend on their motorcycle as I'm like wobbling around, and I need a gimbal that can sort of support that. So this is probably one of the best on the market, if not the best single-handed gimbal on the market. And then I shoot on my Sony a7 III. So what I really dig about this whole setup is really the fact that you're actually stuck onto a prime lens. Now a lot of people enjoy having the flexibility of a zoom lens. Now I'll say having a 24-70 or a 28-75 is an amazing setup to have. It's great to have versatility, especially if you're doing event shoots, but being sort of fixed to a certain focal length makes you be more creative with certain angles. But let's get into the technical stuff, the moves, the slides, the swoosh overs. What makes this such a great setup for that? Well, personally, I really dig this focal length, especially on the gimbal, mostly because you get a great distance away from things, but you're not too far away. So let's just start rolling here. And already, like with this coverage that I'm getting with the bike or the fat scooter, I'm at a really nice distance. I'm shooting at an f1.6, and I'm able to get just a little bit of depth between myself and the scooter. And that way I can do sort of like these nice little slide like yoga moves, and we're getting some really good depth in the background, as well as still keeping a nice distance. Now, this obviously would look pretty sick at, let's say, a 70mm or even 100mm. But personally, I'm digging the 50mm because then I can sort of go in and get some nice coverage here. And again, I think that 1.6 just looks so crispy. I mean, I'm a huge fan of that bokeh look. Some of you might be like, oh, it's too much, I don't like it. But personally, I freaking love it. Now, a big point of reference for why I'm doing this tutorial and why I think it's something important to discuss is a music video that I just shot for the band Safe as Houses. Now in that video, I used this setup exclusively, and the reason why I dug it so much was because we were able to convey a lot of emotion through the moves that I was shooting with. So one of the primary setups that we utilized actually was having me sitting on a wheelchair while rotating this around one of our actors and dancers to create this really dynamic move. Now I shot on the 50mm over a wide angle, over a super duper tight lens, because I wanted to add that depth within the frame. I wanted to feel the claustrophobia within the scene, and I wanted to give it that more of a cinematic flavor. Now, I was actually just talking to Carl, the guy who was shooting this beforehand, and we were talking about prime focal length for cinema. And the beauty range is usually between 40mm to 50mm that some of the biggest cinematographers in the world shoot on. And so again, for me, 50mm is a wonderful focal length, but let's talk about that swivel move that you're seeing within this music video. I'm gonna recreate it on my one wheel because I don't have a wheelchair. But essentially, if you have this gimbal setup and you have your 50mm attached to your gimbal and you're on some sort of wheelie device, you're able to just get some of the most dynamic frames is because you're sort of in this nice sort of free, smooth, and you're also going at a good pace. So you can just see how this is just kind of rotating around this guy. And again, when we were filming the coverage with the dancers, I really wanted the audience to feel almost as if they were a dancer themselves. Now, the beautiful thing about having a gimbal is you don't necessarily have to do stationary shots that kind of just act more like a tripod. And you also don't have to do crazy, like moving around, you're running around, you're kind of doing that run and gun sort of same day event style shooting. You can do a hybrid of different angles. And personally, I love the setup of being on like a moving vehicle or rotating around something. And I find that having a gimbal in a certain vessel, let's say it's a wheelchair, it's the back of an ATV, or it's on a one wheel, this can create some really dynamic coverage. So diversifying the setups that you're utilizing, from having it on foot, making it set up on a tripod, or even having it on a wheelchair, can create some really amazing coverage that, for me, developed an amazing music video. But another interesting shot that you can do is push-in shots. So kind of that nice reveal, that Michael Bay slide-in effect, which is something similar that you would see in, let's say, an action movie, or perhaps you could do to sort of reveal something epic. So this is the car commercial style shot that I'll get with this. So you're gonna start out wide, and again, you can do this by foot, but it looks way cooler on a wheelable device. You start out wide, you find that sort of center crosshair moment, and then you just roll into your subject, keeping it in focus with autofocus, and boom. And again, it might take a couple times, but we use this so many times on the music video. And again, for this sort of setup, I use this for event videos and event shoots. And something that can really elevate this sort of build and this sort of camera setup is, let's say you don't have the wheelable device with you and you're shooting an event video. And essentially what I like to do is put a microphone on my gimbal, and then this becomes like an ENG style shooting insane monster mode camera. That's what we're doing right now. We have the gimbal set up with a lav microphone, and the coverage that you're able to get is like super professional, really high quality, and you can utilize that audio for your documentary, whatever you're capturing. So this build, this sort of setup, like I said at the beginning of this video, is one of my favorites, not because I'm trying to sell you something or not because someone sold it to me. It's because it is so dynamic and versatile. And if you don't have a 50mm, try it with whatever lens setup you have, but be creative with your gimbal, and don't immediately put on a wide angle or something a little bit wider, anything from like a 16 to 24mm, because we've seen those shots before. We know it looks good. Play around, experiment with tighter focal lengths, something like a 50, maybe even a 70, or try out something like 100mm if you can put it on your gimbal. You're able to get such dynamic framing that can create some really beautiful imagery. And again, I think the music video that we shot and showed as an example, or the event footage, or even my buddy on his motorcycle can show you an example of that. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, or maybe ideas and things that I didn't implement into this tutorial, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. If you guys are wanting sort of a step-by-step breakdown, maybe you didn't have your pen and paper throughout this tutorial to write it all down, I have a blog post that has it all written down in the description below. So again, thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks for tuning in and checking it out. And until next time, I'm Zach here from PremiumBeat. Keep making some great stuff.